the current leader for the Lamu Universities and Colleges Association. So speaking for university students as well as TVETs right there, we also have a youth leader on this other end who is with us right here in studio today, and we will be leading this conversation to just realize and see whether the new funding model as envisioned by the Ministry of Education and the Kenyan government as at now is what is fit for the country. Starting from you, Turunga, do you feel like the new funding model is the silver bullet to the problem we're having with funding universities?
Okay, according to me, I think it's not working. And the old funding model is better compared to this. Why should we change something which is working and rush to use something which they have not finished to actualize the face of it all? All
right. Allow me to go to James Mulamba, who is joining us here as well, youth leader par excellence, who has been a university leader as well, understanding the intricacies of these. And James, do you feel like this is sufficient? Does it work?
The new funding model is not working, as you can see from the discontent that students have shown in the streets. And before that, they were complaining, and they've been complaining for years and for months actually, and no one was listening. I'm very proud of students and university leaders in this country today for organizing protests to say no to this new funding model, because they do not understand it, and the government itself does not understand it. There was nothing absolutely wrong with the first model, so wrong that it needed to be changed. And some people say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So we are asking ourselves, why do we need a new funding model? And the first one was working just fine. For example, the government is trying to push us from NHIF to SHIF. NHIF was working in this country. Yes, it had its weaknesses. Say, for example, not covering some illnesses, or covering illnesses to a certain percentage, or not being provided or covered for in private hospitals, but it was working. Why do we need to go to SHIF? So we question everything Ruto touches, because almost everything he touches fails.
All right, and probably just to get into the funding model itself, you know, when President William Ruto got to the helm of power, at least 23 out of the roughly 40 universities that we have in the country were running in debt, into serious debt, which was crippling the activities there. And among the strategies in the new funding model is where university students are looked at based on where they come from, and the government now supports those who are from a household that cannot raise sufficient funds. Is that model likely to work, according to Turunga?
Okay, according to me, the new funding model, I feel like it's favoring the universities more than it's favoring the students. Why can't the government use another alternative method of raising funds for the university and also reduce embezzlement, instead of using the funding model to support the universities, and yet the students are suffering? They cannot even raise the school fees. As of now, 14,000 students have not reported to the universities. Reason being, they don't have the money to pay for their school fees. Then why can the government is supposed to make it easier for the students and not to make it harder for the students? Why not control the embezzlement? For example, the CS of Blue Economy the other day told us that the government used 1.3 billion to count fish. Really? Do we need that? Why shouldn't we use all this money and spend it on our education? Why shouldn't we use all the CDF money, put it in one basket, use the money that the government, for example, in the past budget, the government used 4 billion, allocated 4 billion for the education sector. Why shouldn't the government use the 4 billion, add it in one basket together with the CDF and all the county funds allocated for education, and make education free in Kenya? That's the way we should go.
All right. And joining us in the panel later today also will be Mazao Rocha, who happens to be the president, the University of Nairobi, and among those who were really pushing for the demonstrations by the students in opposition of this specific new funding model. And looking at it now, the mechanisms that this new funding model has taken, looking at, from weighing the ability of a student to pay school fees, owing to where they come from, sounds like fair in as much as you say it supports, the institutions and rather not the specific students. Probably what would be the issue with the calculations that they're doing?
The means testing instrument has been criticized for being ineffective in identifying who's really needy, how really needy are you, classifying who's less needy, extremely needy, who's able as a student, basing on their guardians or their parents. And we have a problem with that. See, for example, female students are awarded more points as compared to their male counterparts. How is that even fair? Say, for example, the dishonesty that is in both the students and the parents gives us a situation, an unprecedented situation that we need to solve. It is a situation those who came with this model did not probably figure out or anticipate, because we have rich students from able backgrounds who are pushing to be classified as very needy students. And that has been the problem with the bursary allocation. We have parents who pull up with big machines, say for example Land Cruisers, Range Rovers, and they are waiting for 10,000 shillings in bursary. It doesn't make sense. We have bursary checks issued in restaurants and high-end hotels in this country. See, if you can afford that vehicle, let's be fair, you can afford that 10,000. But these people get preference over those that really deserve these funds. So we have students and parents who are conniving to provide information that deceives the government that they belong to the needy category. And that disenfranchises the students who really need that money. So that is something the government did not think about, and they need to know how to curb that. It is a problem that needs to be brought to a stop, because we have students who are very needy, extremely needy, who've gone to day schools, who could not afford national schools even when they were qualified to go to those national schools, but they are now categorized in band 5.
All right, and currently, even as the government pushes for 100% transition, from the beginning of school all the way to tertiary institutions, we're talking about universities and TVETs. Now, this is putting pressure on these institutions. And so with the funding model, it appears that the government, or rather the Ministry of Education, is looking at to cushion the school, but on the other end offering loans, what has been in the old model as help to these students as well. Turunga, is it a continuation with this transition? Does the transition appear to be smooth?
Okay, the transition does not appear to be smooth. For example, I've talked about the help. Do you know that in the old model, the government could not even give all the students a help of 40,000? So how do we expect them to give help of 60,000? That's not possible. See, this is the reality that we need. Because we believe this government has been lying to us more than the good that it has to offer. We have a president whose hobby is to lie to Kenyans. See, for example, if let's say, if we could give the people age, depending on how they lie, I think he will be immortal somehow. I believe as a country we need to have a conversation on the way forward, and the education sector, we need to favor education and look at it as an angle of how do we bring education, because education should be an equalizer. And the new funding model is somehow discriminatory, and it brings classism, which should not be the case. Yeah.
And probably what from the current trajectory, even as you say, 14,000 students are yet unable to join school from the current model. What does the future look like in terms of implications on students?
I feel like it will be a country full of students not achieving their dreams. That's the way I think the government is taking us, and I feel like we should just revert to the old funding model.
Well, Mulamba, they say change is the only constant thing, and there has been resistance to this conversation on the new funding model, which continues to be there, based on, there was nothing wrong with the previous one. But then again, is there any good that comes with the new funding model from where you sit?
The new funding model would have been a game changer if they got the means testing instrument right. I want to be fair to the government, but because they did not get that right, and students and parents do not understand how I am going to be categorized as a student into this band, and this other student is going to be categorized into this different band. That is part of the biggest chunk of the backlash the government is fighting now. See, I had an interesting case of a parent who has two children. They're actually twins, went to the same primary school, went to the same secondary school, and possibly are in the same university or universities that are probably on the same level. Say for example, UN and Kenyatta University are almost on the same level. So how they charge fees is almost the same. How the cost of the degree for medicine in UN and KU are almost the same. So these students have been in the same, let me say, in the same bracket all their lives. But one student is categorized in band 1, the other is categorized in band 5. This looks like magic to us. It's witchcraft. I mean, how do you explain this? Twins who've gone to the same schools, belonging to the same parents, who've belonged to the same economic bracket. Now one is rich and one is poor. So it appears like guesswork to us, and that is what the problem is. We have a government that is guessworking everything. The beta development plan by Ruto is a guesswork. Even himself does not know how to explain what is bottom up. He gives a lot of stories, but he cannot explain that. And everything this government is doing looks like a trial and error stuff. So let's see if it works. So that is why we do not trust him. Add that to the lies. How do you even trust him?
Well, heavy sentiments right there. And for everyone wondering, probably as you hear our guests tonight mentioning about the various bands that we're having categorizations for the students, we have graphics for this, where you can see that, you know, there is band 1, which is meant for the extremely needy and vulnerable, where they're given at least 95% scholarship with a loan of up to 25%, as well as we have a household contribution of about 10% and an upkeep support of 60,000 Kenyan shillings. We also have a second band of income. This is low-income students based on the household that they come from. They're getting a scholarship of 60%, loaned at least 30%, and then the household contribution becomes the 10% now, and the upkeep support they get is 55,000. We also have band 3, which is needy students, whose scholarship is 50%, and loan takes 30, household contribution makes 20 for it, and upkeep support becomes 50,000. Then we have the middle income students whose scholarship ends at 40%, loaned 30%, and the household contribution becomes 30%. Now this making up for the 100% of the required capitation for them, and there's no upkeep for this category. Then we have students from high income households whose scholarship is 30%. They're also given a loan amounting to 30%, matching the scholarship, and now the household is expected, or rather is left to take care of 40% of what is there. And what is being used to measure these are the means testing instruments, or the MTI, which are used now to determine where the students will be placed. And that is what continues to spark controversy as to whether the right means is being used and whether it will work. But then looking at it again, there has been complaints of engagement so far. From where you sit, Turunga, as a student leader, has the government engaged you, or rather has the Ministry of Education engaged you matters the new funding model, how to implement it, or even way going forward?
Okay, that's where now the government failed in this funding model, because even the communication was poor. To start with, they did not communicate to the universities. The university students were not even called on the discussion table to determine the method that we'll use as a country on the new funding model, you see. And once you don't involve the stakeholders, you are doomed to fail, because they are the students who are in those universities, and we cannot have universities if you don't have students. And one thing is, in our current generation, 60% of almost the students, the only thing they can inherit from their parents is education, and the government is working hard to deny them that. So I believe that if they could work more on effective ways of funding the university, because it's more of used to fund the universities instead of assisting the students to achieve their dreams, which is what to be done.
All right, and to continue this conversation, joining us live from Mombasa is one who has served for a long time as a student leader and now proceeding to become the Member of Parliament, Embakasi East. I'm talking about Babu Owino, who is joining this conversation from Mombasa. And Babu Owino, pushing this conversation to you, you have been someone that has witnessed the old funding model as you led, and are now privy to the information as to what the new funding model is made of. From where you sit, how do the two balance?
Hello?
His lighting went off.
Hello, can you just ask the question again, please?
All right. Mheshimiwa Babu, what we're saying is you have been a beneficiary of the old funding model as a student and a student leader, and now are privy to the information of what is contained within the new funding model. Do you see the way forward as the new funding model? Is it a solution to the troubles that were there initially with the universities?
Thank you so much. I want to tell you that the new funding model is completely a way to it is a way that is going to kill education in our nation. And if you look at, there's some echo when I'm talking, at least there's some echo, so I don't know if I can just proceed. Thank you. Thank you. So the new funding model has been a problem and will still be a problem. It is designed in such a way that it's going to deny our brothers and sisters a way to access quality education. Why? Because the new funding model is actually a way to increase university fees. You cannot be in a position to increase university fees for those students who are coming from very poor backgrounds. If you look at Kenya, 85% of Kenyans are living in poverty. Therefore, only 15% are somehow in middle class. But with the 85% that we have as a number, that is quite large. And therefore, we are being told that students will be put in different bands, the banding system. When we talk about the banding system, number one, it is very unconstitutional because it is discriminatory in nature. Number two, a parent in this nation can only take care of his or her son up to the age of 18 years old. That is the age of majority. After which that parent has no obligation, has no any parental responsibility to pay university fees for this child. It means that every child who's attained the age of 18 years can only have money by one if this child has inherited, under the law of succession, inherited an estate from the parent. And therefore, at 18 years old, when a child is, when a comrade is joining a university, that comrade has no work. And you're subjecting this comrade to pay fees, assuming that it is the responsibility of the parent of this comrade to pay the university fees. Therefore, there is no any person in this country at 18 years who has never worked that can afford that university fees. If we look at the old funding model, which was the HELB system, Higher Education Loans Board, where a student only had to pass exams. From any part of this country, any region in this country, a comrade just had to pass exams, that is KCSE examination, then was being admitted to a university. The government was loaning the student. The student could study for 4 years if it was a 4-year course, 5 years engineering course, or 6 years a medicine for that matter. Then this student would pay this money later on. But what are we experiencing now? We're experiencing a situation where you are being told that you are being put in a band, that in band 1, and in band 1 you have to pay, which is also still more as compared to what was being received during the HELB days. When we look at our current president, President Ruto is a beneficiary of boom. What is boom? Boom was being given to comrades in the 1980s, 70s, and even early 90s before the introduction of HELP. And boom was a grant. It wasn't a loan. Boom was not meant to be repaid. Boom was meant to facilitate education of a student, after which nobody could pay it back. And therefore, were it not for education, our president would have never gone to State House. He would have never come to Nairobi. And therefore, if in the 1980s, when he joined first year at the University of Nairobi, Chiromo campus in 1987, he was given boom, he was being educated for free. Why is he using this opportunity that God has given to him to ensure that he destroys education in this nation? We clearly know the role of education in the growth of our economy, in the economic development of a state. And number one, that is in provision of skills. Literally, if you go to the hospital, the medics are trained. If you do agriculture, you must know to what ratio are you going to mix your fertilizer so that you can achieve better production. If you go to any industry, the role of skills matter skills. So everywhere we need education to grow our economy. There is a child that is coming direct from Sugoi. That child is being sent away for fees as a day scholar in high school, which is only 9,000 Kenya shillings. But the parent of this child, who is a mama mboga, who is a boda rider, who is a person who is doing Jengo, cannot afford 9,000 in a year. This child has been sent away from school, sitting down with the mom, roasting maize by the roadside, just because they lack 9,000 Kenya shillings. Why do you want to again overburden this child by increasing fees at the university? The best way to destroy and to kill a child and the dreams of a child is to take a book and a pen from them. The moment you take those two items, you've destroyed that child, and by extension, you've destroyed the future of this nation. Therefore, in short, in summary, I would like to tell you that the new funding model should be suspended immediately. Should be suspended immediately. Hello, are you getting me? Hello?
Yes, you are indeed audible.
Thank you. So,
Well,
in short, the new funding model should clearly be suspended, and we embrace the old funding model. Thank you. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Babu. We know that is Embakasi East Member of Parliament, who happened to be the leader of the University of Nairobi for a very long time. And now joining us in studio is someone who now walks in the same footsteps, leading the students as the president, who is Mazao Rocha. Welcome very much to the discussion. Your predecessor says this new funding model for the universities should be done away with completely. Is it something you agree with?
Yes, thank you, sir, first for this opportunity, and I truly concur with my chair. I call him chair, and he's our senior comrade, and it is very true. As a union, as an association, and as students all across the country, we are all in one voice that the model should be disbanded. They should disband the bands. We should work with the DUC model if really they want us to progress. And as he said, it's true. As of right now, comrades are really suffering at heart. We have first years who have not yet joined in school, who've not yet joined in campus because of these school fees. Yes, they say that the new model is being brought so that it can cater for the needy, but it's a pure lie, because the DUC was even better. We had people coming to school and they would pay low fees, like where I'm in my 5th year doing civil engineering, and I'm using the older model, and I'm paying 26,000 Kenyan shillings, and my mother is Mama Mboga. And at least for now where I stand, at least I've been able to access quality education because of this model. As of yesterday, when you were giving a press statement at the premier school, we had a second year. His name is Francis. He's in second year doing the same course that I'm doing, civil engineering, and he's he's from a single parent. He now has a debt of over 120,000 Kenyan shillings. He's only been able to pay 30,000 shillings. So this same case applies to other students across not only UN, across other faculties and in other schools. So we are all in one voice that we don't want this model, and we've been clear enough. And one thing is that we really want to condemn the divide and rule policy, or the method that the government is trying to impose on us, because we've seen that the president has brought these committees, which we are wondering, why do we need 4 committees to address all these issues? Why do we need a committee to address loans when you have the HELB? Really, he said that he wants to embrace austerity measures. Now we are having a committee of over 178 students to address something that is already under a department, under a docket. The ones for loans, the ones for scholarships, all these are under the ministries. So as for where we stand, we are in unison. And as the president of UN, I want to assure all my comrades and all the nation at large and all this poor families that I will stand with them, and even the students can attest. And time the clock is ticking. Yesterday we gave a 14-day strike notice that when we will start, it will run for 14 days until we see the end of the results. Because I'm sure after these 2 months, we really won't get any results from these committees, because what we have addressed, they already know. We just told them, if really you want to work with this thing, then disband the band 4 and band 5, or work with the DUC. We have told them that. We have told them we don't want loans. We are all poor, from poor families, literally. It's not them that don't have money. We also don't have money. Comrades can't afford 3 meals in a day, literally. Even up to now, they are even texting me that they want lunch, they want supper, and it's at night, because they didn't eat at lunchtime, you see.
All right, and now comparing the means testing instrument, which is what is being adopted in the new funding model, compared to what was initially there in the differentiated unit cost, what you're referring to as DUC, we see that it's constant, that students continue getting funding in terms of loans, which we had HELB in DUC, and we have now loans continuing, moving over to the means testing instrument, that being a constant, are students still being favored under that?
So for now, what I can say about the means testing instrument, it is not implemented in the right way as they say it is, because as I've said, we are already witnessing arrears of students who are extremely poor being placed in the bands of rich kids, and we have some, but I've not yet seen a child who is from a wealthy family being placed in the band of poor students. I've not yet seen that. So as per where we stand, the MTI, it is faulty, and they really should address it if they really want to work with this model, which I'm not seeing it being implemented either way. And also, apart from that, what we can say as students is that really, if they really, as of Kenya, we are a signatory in UNESCO, and UNESCO clearly states that the world should embrace free and quality education to everybody. So we are really not giving a good picture, or are not really setting the pace to other nations who are really looking up to us to show them the way, if we are to guide them towards achieving quality education and free education to everybody. Because we have seen presidents before who've made great steps towards making education free and affordable. But now in this regime, yes, they say that we have no funds, but I think it's a matter of priority, because we are really seeing the president and other people and the government at large borrowing loans, but not for healthcare, not for education, but instead they pump these things into roads and into infrastructure. Since I'm sure that's where they get the kickbacks. But if really they had the concerns, or if they really mattered, or if they really cared for us as citizens, they would have taken this money and pumped it into our core business, that is education. Because why should they then take loans and then loan us again? So we are paying loans twice the amount that they are borrowing on their behalf.
Mulamba, I know there are many complaints about the MTI, the means testing instrument, and how it is not being utilized as it ought to be. But is there something good to write home about the new funding model as per where you stand?
I don't think there's anything good to write about the new funding model or about Ruto and his government in the first place. There's nothing positive about him, and I don't think that will change. I hope it changes, but I don't think that will change. Say, for example, what Senior has said, why was it so hard for the government to do public participation on this stuff before they rolled it out? Before you bring a new roster or you bring a change in a certain company, you have to call those who are involved to a discussion to agree on several issues. You do not bulldoze change to people and expect them to take it sitting down. There was no public participation that was done on this. The student leaders have said it, and the students themselves have said it. How hard was it to conduct public participation? The government has money to bribe student leaders, but it doesn't have money to do public participation. The government has the time to sell us lies and propaganda, but it has no time to do public participation. That is really questionable. So we need to go back to the drawing board, and we need to have an honest conversation. And I wonder, this president pushes the narrative of he's a guy who wants to talk. During his campaigns, and even now when he's president, his speeches almost are riddled with the stories of we need to have a conversation. I mean, where was that conversation when he was bulldozing this on students? Did he forget that we need to have a conversation? I mean, he's the one who's always pushing for conversations. Did he forget we need to have a conversation about this? And there's something else I also do not understand in government. During Alfred Mutua's time as government spokesperson, that was during Kibaki's tenure as president, I think Alfred Mutua tried his best to communicate government position on several issues. I think everyone came to know Alfred Mutua. He rose to prominence, I should say, by being excellent at communicating the government's position on several issues, explaining why we need this, why we don't need this, why the president thinks this is important, the position of the cabinet, and so on. We have a government spokesperson who has deputies, I think, and we have a state house spokesperson who cannot communicate anything. Does that even make sense?
All right, and probably getting to Runga before we take it, we hand it over to Amwai. When you, same question posed to our colleague over there, but is there something good to write home about, other than all the complaints we've made, but is there something good that comes with the new funding model from where you sit?
Nothing positive comes out from the new funding model, and I believe we should go back to the basics, where this new funding model is discriminatory and it is here embracing classism. And by returning to basics, I mean that in our constitution, Article 53(1)(a) talks about the right of every child is entitled to the right of free basic education. They'll say comrades are not children, but then where does the constitution come in terms of the youth? That's Article 55, which says that the students or the youths are entitled to education. And by this, the government should look for means on how they can embrace this education and how they can change, because there's no way you can say the constitution entails that the students are or they have a right to education, but then you're making it expensive for them to get that education. You see, for example, there's this incident, was it last week? There's this a girl from Taita Taveta was brought in, I think was in Citizen. She's studying education. She has not yet reported to school. Her fees is 285,000, and 285,000, that's education. How about medicine? What do you think the fee will be? So, and minus all the loans that they say and the scholarship that the government will offer, she's supposed to pay 60,000. And in the old funding model, in 2021, when students were being admitted to DASTA, a government-sponsored student was supposed to pay 18,500. They are currently paying that because they are still continuing students. I think by now they're in 4th year. They are paying 18,500. And the same time we had NHIF, because now NHIF now raises that issue of medical cover, so it's cheap. But now they've removed the NHIF. So with this new funding model, the fees is high. The same fees that someone who was supposed to pay 18,500 in the old model, currently they're paying 70,000. You see, and then the president is lying to us that it's intended, it's favoring the students. That's a lie. You see, and we need to have a conversation as a country. What do we need as a country? We don't need lies each and every time. We need him to start acting. Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Indeed, those are the voices of some of the student leaders that we've had, weighing in on the issue of the new funding model. But remember, the president just nominated and appointed 129 members to form part of a committee that will be reviewing the new university funding model, chaired by Professor Japheth Michenin Tiba, who will be expected to be giving results of the new funding model in 2 months. A period which can only be extended at the will of the president. But until then, Brian Amwai, we're going to be handing over to you. That is what we've heard about the new university funding model matters education from this end of the studio.
Right, thank you, Kagina, for having a conversation around what you're talking about, and that is the state of education in the country. Of course, looking at the university funding model, we continue with this coverage here, and we want to take a little bit of focus on this, the implementation of the competency-based curriculum, and also touch a little bit on what Kagina was talking about, and that is the university funding model that has elicited quite a number of reactions in the country at this particular moment. And of course, joining me for this conversation, seated on my left here, is Moses Nthurima, who is the Deputy Secretary General Cooper. Thank you so much for making time, sir.
Very much for invitation.
Yes, seated at the middle, of course, we have Nabina Buera, who is a committee member of the National Assembly when it comes to the Education Committee, and also the Member of Parliament, Lugari. Omwami, how are you?
I'm well, and I'm very impressed with the expose the young people from the universities have given on this issue of funding.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for making time. And of course, we have Silas Obuhatsa, who is the National Chairman, Parents Association. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you. I'm here for you.
Good, thank you. And also joining us live, we have Embakasi Member of Parliament, that is Babu Owino, will also be weighing in on this conversation here in studio. I want us to start here in studio first. We take a look at 2017 is when we rolled started implementing the CBC. We had President William Ruto come into office and formed a task force to look into some of the concerns that had been raised by parents and teachers to try and see whether we can streamline this particular process. Yet, 7 years down the line, we still have people complaining about the implementation of the CBC, especially when it comes to parents, teachers at large. Where did we go wrong when it comes to this particular implementation? What did we miss 7 years down? Let me start with you, Moses.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. And I think this debate is timely because 7 years down the line, we are still crying about the CBC. The CBC was going on very well until last year when we had a new government. And the CBC was conceived under the Douglas Odhiambo task force, which was formed in 2012. And I was a member of the task force in that, and we are looking on how to align education sector into the new constitution. And Article 53 that talks about the interest of the child, about the compulsoriness of education of our children. So we are looking at how do we change, how do we bring a system that fits in the interest of the children. And we say the only way in the current situation to bring the children into contributing into the national economy is to harness their talent. And of course, we made recommendations that went to the technocrats, that is curriculum experts or scientists. And of course, they came up with the CBC, which is acceptable world over. If you go to Ghana, that is going on. South Africa is going on. Almost all the countries of Africa is now under the CBC curriculum. So, so when we started, the government was moving with the bringing the systems to the teachers, because the teachers are the implementers. And the teachers were being retooled, teachers were being taken through on how to implement. They were bringing in new methods of dealing with the CBC. But then when this government came in 2022, they decided now to form something called Working Party. And this Working Party was constituted with a number of them were prayer warriors. Mm-hmm. They were not curriculum experts. Okay. And others were professors who are not oriented in education.
All right.
So what they did is that they made recommendations and they reversed the gains which were been realized during Uhuru's time.
So the formation of the task force was not did not do justice to the process, to the curriculum itself.
That is where the destruction started, because right now grade 7 and 8 are in primary, which basically lacks, it has no facilities, it has no teachers. Teachers are in high school.
Okay, we'll be coming to that and looking at the issue to do with especially resources as far as teachers are concerned, and also the infrastructure. Let me come to you, Silas. You deal with parents. When the issue to do with public participation in the country has been a subject of debate, we do understand that with the rolling of this one, parents must have been, involved to some extent. But yet again, we see a lot of complaints from them. There's some that are welcoming the move, but also not, trying to mention one or two things that are not working as far as this curriculum is concerned. What is the stance, or stand rather, of parents as far as the curriculum is concerned 7 years later?
Thank you, my friend. First of all, let me thank Mr. Moses from Kupet for what he has said. When you live with a wife in the house, you have a child, but people say that that's not your child. And you're not sure whether the child that your wife has is your child also. You always live half-half. So here, one, CBC approach began on a wrong foundation, as we have heard. And the parents knew this. The research that was done, even by Professor Diambo, might not have affected everything that was concerned for CBS to take place in Kenya. Let me first tell you this. I did a study in 2020 on CBC introduction in Kenya, and the findings were that CBS will not work in Kenya.
Will not work in Kenya?
Yes, because one, we didn't have trained teachers prepared in advance. Parental involvement was not there. Parents cannot embrace a curriculum that they are not aware of. They don't know. It's like just hijacking them and telling them that tomorrow there's a new curriculum, you have to support that. So the perceptions of the parents
let me ask you this, based on the research you did, you say,
yes.
It indicated that it will not work.
I'll come to that.
Yet we're still continuing with it. So
I'm coming to that.
Has it changed your perception in any way?
I'm coming to that.
Because we have a dictatorship in the form of a democracy.
Yes, let me just go on. I'm saying, so the perceptions of parents from the beginning was that CBS will not succeed, and because they were not involved. And they saw that it was starting on a wrong note. The report by Amina, the former whatever, you remember this report? It actually explained that CBS will not succeed in Kenya. Parents had this. They were in the papers, they read, it was in the media, you were there also announcing it. We saw it as parents. So, involvement of parents was a failure. Secondly, the report by KNUT revealed clearly that it was still impossible for CBS to succeed in Kenya. My report revealed that personally, that it did not work. So those reports are there. You saw this lawyer who was this? He went to court with the parents to stop CBC, but it never stopped, it went on.
Okay.
So the issue here is the approach was on a wrong note,
all right,
but CBC was a good concept.
Okay, let me bring in Honorable Babu Owino, Embakasi Member of Parliament, joining us live from Mombasa. Babu Owino, 7 years later, we still trying. It is a train that, to some extent, has left the station, but we are wondering whether it is, struggling to stay on the rails, or we actually, it's not moving based on what we've been able to experience from the parents, from the teachers, the challenges that is facing this particular implementation of the CBC. From where you stand, what do you say?
Thank you very much, my brother. First of all, the CBC, I must commend that was an idea whose time had come. And the CBC was invented by the late Professor George Albert Magoa Omore. May his soul rest in peace. CBC is a good diet for our nation, but we can't afford it. It's a diet that we can't afford. And CBC has not been implemented as it should be implemented. When we look, when you go to these schools, you will shed tears. Why? Because number one, a teacher who is trained from the university should at least handle a maximum of 2 subjects comfortably. Then this teacher, when you look at CBC implementation, one teacher is forced to handle between 5 to 10 subjects in a day. Preparation for a subject in a day, on average, should even take you approximately, let's say, 1 hour per subject, which means that a teacher who is teaching CBC course should take at least 10 hours in a day to prepare. Then this teacher should come to school. Then this teacher also has a family and other things to do. So is it really possible for one teacher to spend between 5 to 10 hours in a day to prepare for 10 subjects? That tells you that the quality of education that is being offered at our junior, at the basic level, the basic education level, is not clearly, it cannot be attained. Look at our junior secondary schools, which is part of the CBC curriculum. Now, at that level, our children are being used as guinea pigs, as control experiments, and we are messing this generation because most of them will give up with education. They will just say that enough is enough because they will not stomach it anymore. Number 2, the recruitment of teachers has really, we have really been failed when it comes to CBC. Number 3, the cost of CBC is too expensive. It is a very lucrative curriculum, but the cost that the parents are incurring is too high that a mamamboga that we wanted to build from bottom going up cannot afford. Therefore, CBC is not tenable in this country. We should go back to 844 system, if you ask me, as we look for ways by which CBC can be achieved. Look at the junior secondary schools. We don't have enough infrastructure. We don't have laboratories. We don't have enough classrooms. Then we want to use these kids, these children, as a control experiment where we want to test with them. These are kids who are going to give up in life, if you ask me, and therefore it should be suspended indefinitely. Back to you.
You see, Embakasi Member of Parliament Babu Wino giving his take on what this particular curriculum looks like and what it means for the country. Well, when we started, it's supposed to emphasize on practical skills, creativity, and competence. But Babu Wino says, if we continue with this one, then a lot of students are going to give up, on education. Nabi, I'm going to come back with you. I want to take a short break here on the program. Continue engaging us on our socials at K24, at Kameme TV, across social media platforms. We take a break. We will be back with a conversation on the state of education. Don't go too far.
Kameme TV.